Hi there, I'm Nancy Gothard, Policy Planner with the City of Courtenay. On behalf of the City of Courtenay, Mayor, Council, and staff, I thank you for your interest in the City of Courtenay's Official Community Plan, or OCP. I hope you find this presentation informative and that you feel motivated to share what you think of the proposed vision for Courtenay and draft plan after hearing this presentation and possibly learning more and talking to your friends and family, as we certainly appreciate any effort to get the word out. You can learn more about the OCP, including accessing the full draft plan, summary documents, and background studies at the website listed here, courtenay.ca/OCP update. The online survey runs until March 8th, and the dates for a number of virtual town halls are also listed there between February 9th and 17th. Staff are also always available to take your calls or emails and discuss ideas with you. Now, this presentation is actually a condensed version of a full-length presentation that runs about an hour. Recognizing that not everyone will have an hour, we've created this second film in which you'll still see the full slide deck for the hour-long presentation, but I will only stop and focus on select slides. So this presentation covers the topics in black text in more detail than those in the gray text. So I'll touch on what is an OCP and why is it important, what's important to us in Courtenay that we discovered through the OCP consultation process, the growth management approach, the land use categories and approach, and particularly the next steps of the project. The City of Courtenay respectfully acknowledges that the lands to which this OCP apply are on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. We make this land acknowledgement because acknowledging human relationships to place is an ancient Indigenous practice that continues today. In the spirit of reconciliation, the City of Courtenay makes this land acknowledgement to raise awareness of ongoing Indigenous presence and land rights in the territory that includes and encompasses Courtenay. It invites us, a settler government, the City of Courtenay, to reflect on how we might be perpetuating colonial processes that are ongoing and from which we have benefited, as well as the changes we will make to honor the Indigenous peoples and their lands that we inhabit. OCPs are common in BC, but they are not required. However, any community that wishes to have a zoning bylaw must first have an official community plan. They are visionary, public, and community policy planning documents. They get adopted as a bylaw by mayor and council. They inform municipal spending, services, and capital projects, and provide policies to evaluate new development applications. The diagram on the right reflects how the Local Government Act in BC provides authority for local governments to create OCPs and the regulatory instruments to implement them. It shows how communities that have regional growth strategies, which the Comox Valley does, are to be consistent with said regional growth strategy, and how all other plans, regulations, and decisions are to be consistent with the OCP. The Local Government Act does not require that everything in the OCP be implemented, but it does require that everything the city does and everything that the city does implement be consistent with the OCP. So in short, OCPs are high level and long range, and they provide clarity for how the City of Courtenay will make decisions on included topics when working on topics within its scope. OCPs are documents, and quite long ones. Ours is nearly 300 or 250 pages. They're often used primarily by local governments, developers, community organizations, businesses, and engaged residents. And these are expected to be the primary audiences of Courtenay's OCP. However, the community planning ideas and policies that are contained within them go on to affect the qualities of our communities that make them functional, unique, and delightful. They affect aspects of our communities such as our gathering spaces, community character, protection of lands, downtown and neighborhood centers, the mix of businesses, activities, and vitality within them, transportation choices, and our pocketbooks, both through taxes and user fees, as well as our own personal finances, such as through the housing and transportation choices and affordability that is available to us in our community. I'm not going to spend time on the demographics, but if you want to learn more, please watch the hour-long presentation. So I'm just going to click through a few of the slides that I'm not going to cover in detail at this moment, but just so you can get a sense of what would be involved in that hour-long presentation. So as you can see, there's information on the community engagement, the establishment of a technical advisory committee, some of the highlights over the past couple years of community engagement, all the types of voices that we heard from, and the methods that we used. And what we heard from the wide variety of consultation methods, which I glanced over very briefly, was that reconciliation is very important, that social equity is very important, that there's a wide range of housing choices that are needed, that land use planning should promote compact growth, that natural assets are widely cherished, can provide services, must be protected and restored, that transportation planning and urban form should focus on people, walking, cycling, and transit, that people, places, gathering spaces, and sense of community are very important. Tackling climate change involves many concurrent strategies and delivers on many co-benefits, that integrated approaches are needed to be effective in community actions on a variety of topics, and that strong desire for ongoing community dialogue and stakeholder collaboration. There is that strong desire, I should say. If you wish to learn more about the details of the 4 cardinal directions that are directing this work, please access the plan or the full presentation, but they are, in summary, reconciliation, climate action, community well-being, and equity. The compass has been used as the visual identity for the OCP development process, as it serves as a tool to navigate through change. It helps us to orient to where we stand today and provides direction to where we want to be moving. The goals provide markers as the community moves towards its vision, and these goals are listed here. Investing in relationships, economic success that emerges from community values in place, a love for local places, housing choices for all, functional transportation choices, land is valued as a precious resource, more space and time in nature, strong neighborhoods, and a city for everyone. So those themes emerge directly from the public consultation. And the vision ultimately for Courtenay that's proposed is that Courtenay is responsible for the future, supporting high quality of life with a low carbon footprint for all. There are 2 policy foundations that are used to inform the formulation, the selection of policies that you will see in this document. And one of them is quality of life, and the other is a low carbon pathway. And again, I don't want to spend too much time in this short presentation on those details, but if you want to learn more about those factors that are used to inform the policies, you can access that information in the plan or in the hour-long presentation. Now, growth management is a core function of an OCP, so I will spend a little more time on that. Remember that we can't have a zoning bylaw without first having an OCP. Now, the physical growth of the city impacts its success. That's not just the case for Courtenay, that's any community. And managing the physical expansion of a city has a tremendous impact on that community. So a more compact urban form in which growth is carefully managed and concentrated in existing urban areas can help a community meet goals that include transportation choices, natural area protection, housing diversity, and more efficient service delivery, which in the long run could mean a more efficient, more affordable services. Now, Courtenay's boundary extension history is shown here, and it shows that the physical growth has historically expanded faster than population growth in Courtenay, which is about 107 years old now. So between 1915 and 1965, the boundaries of Courtenay nearly doubled in size, and between 1965 and now they tripled in size. And we know now today through municipal asset management and community planning best management practices that focused growth is a desired way to manage community growth for those reasons I said before: affordability, natural resource and agricultural protection, and vitality of our communities as well. So to figure out where Courtenay's growth could occur to promote more focused growth, we conducted a range of spatial analyses that included proximity to services, to transit, to capacity lands that available for development or redevelopment, the environmental constraints in our community, and a land economic analysis. And we used this spatial information to determine where the best locations are to focus growth for the 4,500 more people expected in the approximately next 10 years or so, about 2031. So as you can see, the focus of the growth management objectives is to restrict new development to within Courtenay's boundaries and focus it within core areas through the following urban framework hierarchy. So that hierarchy includes primary growth locations shown in the darker orange. These include town centers and urban corridors. You can see those clustering around the downtown, around the Cliff Corridor, Lower Ryan Road area, and the Upper Ryan Road. Secondary growth locations would be shown in the darker yellow, neighborhood centers and multi-residential lands. These areas cluster around the Lake Trail area, Tin Town, McPhee rail corridor, also around the Lower Ryan Center that we know today, and then a new one out on Anderton and Ryan Road in the future. Now, between the modeling suggested that we could accommodate approximately 70% of that new growth in these centers, these primary and secondary growth centers, and that the remaining 30% of growth could be accommodated in the remaining light yellow areas, which is called, we would call infill areas, a lot of single residential homes and neighborhoods in those areas. And by what we mean by infill, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later, is that secondary units would be permitted either in the form of duplexes or secondary suites, or maybe even a carriage house if the lot could permit that type of development, if its size could. And then the last category in this hierarchy is areas of limited or no growth shown in white. Now, this growth strategy is consistent with the regional growth strategy, which actually we are required to be. So if you want to learn more about the Comox Valley Regional Growth Strategy, I've included the link there as well. Now, there are three land use concepts that are really helpful to understand the proposals in the official community plan. One is mixing land uses. This refers to the diversity of land uses. So for example, homes, shops, industry, institutions, agriculture within a given area. Mixing important destinations and jobs close to home allows residents to live, work, shop, play, and learn close to home. And therefore they can walk or they can bike there and don't always have to be driving. And mixing land uses also means mixing housing choices and housing types. So this OCP prioritizes a mix of uses within growth centers and corridors and a diversity of housing choices and types throughout the city. Density refers to the number of people, homes, or jobs within a certain area. Higher residential densities, often in the form of multi-unit homes, can result in energy savings, lower per capita municipal infrastructure and servicing costs. So for the roads, the water and sewer infrastructure, transit, fire stations, recreation centers, all those municipal services, it can result in greater housing choices and affordability, more vibrant street life and public spaces, a greater proportion of trips taken by foot, bike, and transit, and as a result, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which of course is a major direction of this plan. This OCP supports slight increases in densities throughout the entire city while prioritizing density in those growth centers and corridors that I mentioned. Now, urban form and design refers to the physical structure and appearance of the city. It determines how open spaces, transportation networks, ecological systems, buildings, and humans all relate to each other in physical space. Urban form and design should also communicate a community's values, reflect its heritage and character and culture, and make a space a place people actually want to be. So this OCP supports high quality urban form and design to ensure that mixed use, higher density centers throughout Courtenay are thoughtfully designed to complement and enhance the neighborhoods in which new development will occur. Now I'm going to walk through the various land use designations with the assistance of some conceptual drawings. These are meant to provide some examples of what types of development would be supported in different areas of the city. The downtown is a type of town center, which would allow for a wide variety of mix of commercial and residential uses, up to 4 stories in height along 5th Street and Old Orchard area, and up to 8 stories in the other western and southern parts of the downtown. These annotations included on the drawing there are some annotations included on the drawing that show features that are needed to support a low carbon future and what we could expect to see more of as our community develops and redevelops. So I don't want to spend time on them, but a few examples include more electric vehicle charging facilities, more tree canopy, urban agriculture opportunities, and things like solar panels. So that's what we would see in a low carbon urban future. The other town centers and urban corridor include the Upper Ryan Road, the Lower Ryan Road area, and Cliff Avenue corridor. They all also would support taller buildings up to 8 stories and a wide range, a mix of uses, including residential. I will point out that the land use designations are different than zoning regulations. So the OCP identifies general land uses, but it does not change the zoning itself. This means that a zoning bylaw change must also occur following the OCP adoption in order for a developer to actually have zoning permissions to build this type of development. But the OCP says what we want. The city is considering the role of pre-zoning key properties, which would then provide that zoning permission. However, there are advantages to requiring that a zoning amendment process be undertaken by a development applicant, such as then the community has the opportunity to provide additional feedback, and the city has more ability to negotiate community amenities as part of the zoning approval. So I just want to highlight that distinction between OCP land designations and zoning bylaw, as the adoption of the OCP will not automatically change the zoning permissions, but as I'll say later in the presentation, the zoning bylaw will need to be updated, and the decisions around where to pre-zone or not will be made at that time. The neighborhood centers would permit a more limited mix of uses such as daily services, cafes or small grocers or barbers, as well as multi-residential buildings up to 4 stories in height. They would allow for more local commercial and community services needs to be met within walking distances for more residences. The 4 locations are around the Lake Trail, Community School, the Tin Town area along McPhee Avenue, Rail Corridor, and that new one out at Ryan and Anderton Road. The urban residential land use designation covers the largest extent of area within the city. Today, these areas are predominantly detached single residential homes with areas of town that also permit duplexes, suites, or detached secondary dwellings, such as the carriage home or garden suite. The proposed land use urban residential land use designation would permit up to 2 units on all single residential properties, which could take the form of a duplex, a secondary suite, or a detached secondary dwelling. I will point out that this is a proposed change that would occur very shortly after the OCP begins the adoption process in the roughly May or June timeline, and it would take the form of a zoning bylaw change initiated by the city to permit more forms of lower but increasing density and housing throughout the city. So sometimes referred to as gentle infill or missing middle housing. So I will note as well that this urban residential designation would also support residences up to 4 stories, but that those would be subject to separate rezoning applications that a developer would put forward. So a key message with urban residential areas is the policy intent in the OCP is to support more infill throughout the existing neighborhoods in an incremental way. So we would expect that those changes in those areas would be very gradual. There are a few areas around the Lower Ryan Road Town Center that have been identified for multi-residential due to some larger lots and also their close proximity to a town center. These areas would also require that a rezoning application be submitted. So there would be opportunity for more public input on the appropriate density, setbacks, and character of the development. Now here are just some drawings of what is meant by multi-residential. It could take the form as from ground oriented all the way up to 6-story buildings. Other land uses include the commercial uses such as at the Veterans Memorial Parkway and Old Island Highway intersection in the lower Ryan Road area. And these areas would be only commercial, so not mixed use, particularly this lower flood, the lower Ryan one, because it is located within the floodplain where residential uses are not appropriate. Institutional uses such as public buildings, schools, hospitals, and churches, these are the same as today. The industrial uses are mostly in the South Courtenay area, and the industrial uses would actually be removed from the McPhee rail corridor, although I will point out that some lighter industrial uses mixed with commercial and residences would be permitted in that McPhee rail corridor area, such as we see in the Tin Town area. Parks and Recreation is the same as today, as is the Agricultural Land Reserve, but there is a small area just west of Headquarters Road there that would be designated agriculture, given it is in the floodplain and not suitable for more intensive development. But single residential development as second unit would be permitted. Future growth includes areas where no new development would be encouraged, but that would likely be examined for development potential in the next OCP planning cycle. Now, the OCP also contains some more specific information for particular areas of town, and you can learn more about that in the actual, either the longer presentation where I touch on it a little bit, or the draft plan itself. Now, in addition to the growth management and land use, the OCP also contains an extensive section on specific policies to advance identified objectives within each of these community planning thematic areas. I won't cover this information in any detail in the following slides, but if you are curious about the approach being proposed on how to manage and provide for any of these services and in support of these topics, please go to that courtenay.ca/OCP update to learn more. Now, each of the policy chapters is coded by implementation categories, and I want to point this particular point out. As a question people often ask is, how will the city do all this work? And the answer is that the city will have different roles to play in the implementation of different policies. So for example, some policies will inform new development or city infrastructure standards, or will direct a city regulation that affects development and infrastructure standards to be changed at a later date. Some policies will direct how the city addresses a topic, such as incorporating a new perspective or process into existing city activities. So an example would be ensuring services are provided in a way that supports equity, diversity, and inclusion. Some policies indicate a city preference or a desire to work with others on topics that are outside of the city's control or traditional mandate. An example of this is working with a wide variety of partners to address homelessness and secure more permanently affordable housing. It's important to bear in mind that the OCP is a policy document that lays a foundation for how the city will make decisions on the topics that are within the scope of the OCP. I will talk a little bit about OCP implementation priorities at the end of this presentation, but aside from identifying some of the best ways to start some of those key actions, the OCP's role is primarily to provide clarity on how the city will view and provide strategies for community planning topics. It in and of itself does not set council priorities, but rather is a source of ideas and positions that the mayor and council of the day can use to set more focused priorities for staff work plans and municipal budgets. So if you want to learn more about these thematic topics, there's much more on reconciliation, community participation, streets and transportation, buildings and landscape, affordable housing, natural environment, municipal infrastructure, municipal infrastructure, sorry, I'm off by a slide, municipal infrastructure, social infrastructure, arts, culture, and heritage, food systems, and the local economy. So much more on all of that, hundreds of policies actually within the actual document. Now, the implementation of the OCP will occur through numerous municipal, stakeholder, and individual actions incrementally over the next 10 years and beyond. As a high-level policy instrument, the OCP cannot predict the exact sequencing of actions that are outside of the city's direct control, nor should it provide detailed costing for all actions that will occur over a 10-year timeframe. Many implementation actions will require further investigation, consultation, and resourcing. Nevertheless, there's these three pillars of implementation as we've categorized them, and I'll just go over them quickly here. One of them is progress through relationships. That includes with Comox First Nation, with developers, very important partner, intergovernmental relations, partnerships in general with all types of agencies and community stakeholder groups, and with the wider community. There's a pillar on municipal corporate alignment and priorities, direction on how the city will use the OCP to inform all that we do, including more detailed action on corporate climate action, on monitoring the success of implementing the OCP and how well it's delivering on our goals, and conducting regular OCP refinements. So not necessarily full-scale reviews very frequently, but OCP refinements, small amendments on a regular basis to make sure that it is serving the community as well as it can in an implementation way. And then another important pillar is being supportive of visionary development and development applications. So there's ideas on how we can support applications so that they are more streamlined and more that the clarity and is provided for people who wish to develop. Forming character and protection, environmental and agricultural protection development permits are provided in the OCP, and also more information on priority community amenities when negotiating with developers for on rezoning applications is also included in the OCP. I won't go over the actual specific implementation priorities, but I invite you to look at those if you want. These would lay a strong foundation for all the other work in the OCP to occur. Now, as I near the conclusion of this presentation, I'd like to remind that the OCP is a collective vision and it is a collective action, and that its implementation will be a collective journey. And what we mean by that is that there is a role and a need for literally everyone to engage with this plan if it is to deliver on its full potential. The OCP provides the framework under which all other Courtenay servicing plans, regulations, bylaws, and budgets must follow, and therefore there is a very clear role for the city of Courtenay, the mayor and councillors of the day, so pictured on the left, and city staff as the city integrates OCP directions into how the OCP will be used as a source of ideas for mayor, and city staff as the city integrates OCP directions into day-to-day activities. This image in the middle shows how the OCP will be used as a source of ideas for mayor and council to set priorities, inform departmental business plans, plan for annual and 5-year budgets, and report back to the public annually on progress and set new priorities. However, there is an equally important role for the wider public to engage with the city to ensure that we continue to hear what is important to you in your daily life, how to bring OCP ideas to life, and how the city can work with you to ensure we all experience a high quality of life with a low carbon footprint for generations to come. So on behalf of the city of Courtenay, I hope you see your interests represented in this plan, and we welcome your feedback on how to make it the best representation of Courtenay it can be. This slide is just to remind you that there's lots of information, background information on the OCP process to date. All those background community engagement studies and other research studies are posted there, as well as the draft plan, a summary plan, and the hour-long version of the presentation. So this is my last slide, and at this point of the presentation, if I've achieved my objective, you might be motivated to learn more about the details of the OCP, and here is what to expect for next steps. So right now, until March 8th is that public consultation, so please get on that website, do the survey, tell your friends, maybe come to a virtual town hall. We're also referring out to agencies and other First Nations. And then in the spring, in that kind of May-June timeline, we're intending to start the official adoption process. Now, I will say that the community feedback will first have to be evaluated. So we'll just see how much feedback and how much it differs from the plan in order to understand what might have to change in the plan. But after those changes have been evaluated and proposed and presented to council, then we can begin through the official bylaw reading process. And that does include a council meeting in which the bylaw passes first and second reading, a second council meeting in which there's a public hearing, and then a separate council meeting where the plan would get adopted. And then we also intend, like I mentioned, for some zoning bylaw minor changes to occur to update, to permit secondary suites in residential areas throughout the city, as well as update some parking standards. Then into 2023, we intend to undertake a comprehensive update of the zoning bylaw to make sure that it is supporting the OCP. And then, of course, implementation of the whole OCP will be a long, ongoing incremental process, as I mentioned before. So I thank you very much for your participation today, your interest, and I hope you have a great day. And we hope that we see you out at a virtual event, or that you at least participate in the online consultation. Much appreciated. Bye.